Record.
All right. Good morning, Crystal.
Good morning.
Long time no see, even though I saw you 2 days ago in Orange County. Or actually, we were in LA.
I know.
All right, well, welcome everybody to our Leadership Masterclass call. We do this every couple of weeks, and we're really excited about today's call. We are coming off of a huge regional conference that happened in Southern California. There's 1,000 people there. I want to say thanks to all the speakers and everybody who came out, the interviews. It was really, really a great time. It was a pleasure to be able to host and interact with everybody. We have another couple meetings coming up this weekend, one in Orlando, which I'll be in attendance at. We have one in Philly. And these regional meetings have been an amazing experience across the board. And we love Zoom, but we really love these regional meetings so everybody can connect face to face. And you guys can really network with people from different offices, different situations, organizations, programs, and just the diversity of the people that are successful in our business. It's a special thing to be around. And we really have, more people from different walks of life that are kicking ass in ownership and leadership. So it's been a really great experience. Also, R&R, I'm not the announcement guy, but we do have an R&R official announcement, Dominican Republic, happening the 20th through the 23rd. So, if you're a leader on this call, ask your owner what you got to do to qualify, because this is going to be, one of our best, biggest R&Rs. It's our first one since pre-COVID. So we're really excited about that. Today, you guys are going to get to hear from Crystal. She's going to be talking about student mentality and networking. And then in 2 weeks, you guys are going to hear from Lamine about opportunity. So again, We've been doing these for a couple of years. They're great. Every Tuesday morning or every other Tuesday morning, you guys get to hear from them. But Crystal, you're going to get to talk about being a student. And I think that you're one of the best people in our business who have utilized, all the resources, whether it be Zoom, Sunday calls, networking, to get through the program. So Crystal, how long have you been in our business, first and foremost?
I've been in the business for a total of almost 2 years now, or I guess almost 3 years. I started in August of 2020. So I was in the middle of COVID. And so it's almost 3 years now. I've been officially an owner for a year. I can't believe I just hit my year mark. It's been so exciting.
Yeah, I know.
But I just wanted to say, well, thank you for having me on the call, first of all, but the meeting was so impactful for me. And I like the fact that we interviewed not just owners, but also people who are in the field who are going through, a lot of what the guys are experiencing right now, and showing them that, you can do it as well. Someone like you is actually going through this as well. And if you need to network, they're right there. So I took so many notes, implemented so many things, but it was very impactful. I remember my first one was last year, just because I started in COVID, we didn't get the opportunity to do it. And I was so excited. And it's always exciting every time I go to one. I learn something new each time.
Yeah. Well, Crystal, you're in a great situation. You've been an owner for about a year. Guys, Crystal, in her first year in ownership, saved about 100 grand. She just put out her first outside deal. She's got another assistant manager on the way. And a lot of people, when we network with each other, we want to know their background. Crystal, you're in the Navy for 7 years. And I know you talked about that at the conference, so we won't do the whole bio, but there's so many people that come from the military. So if you guys have people in your office, women and even men who, people who are in the military and even specifically the Navy, we'll make sure you guys get Crystal's contact info, because those initial connection points with people that are new in your business that they can relate to someone makes a massive difference. So Crystal is going to talk to you guys today about being a student and the concept of networking and how important it is to your acceleration through the training program, and how much faster it can help you become successful. And funny enough, Crystal, you're not in your office right now. Whose office are you in?
I'm not actually. I'm in Caleb's and JR's office in Wade. They're like a dynamic trio right now. So I'm here just being like a fly on the wall, just getting as much information as I can, because I realize it doesn't matter how much you know, there's always more. There's always the next person. So I'm here having fun with them and learning.
Nice. So she's already got big money. She already has promotion and she's got more on the way, but she's thinking, well, Caleb's still doing better. So I want to go hang out with him. She's got Wade and JR. I know it's JR's building because I see the Kobe Bryant hat. So it's got to be JR's office. But anyways, guys, please text your leaders, message them, try to get as many people on as possible, because, Crystal's one of the best, but we always want as much information to be shared. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We're going to try to end these calls a little earlier, around 8:40 my time, so we can, 8:45, so we can have some Q&A back and forth. But I'm going to hand it over to Crystal. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Van. Elise, can you help me out with the slides?
Elise always helps us out with the slides.
I know, she's amazing. Thank you, Elise. I don't know what we'd do without you. All right, so let's go. Okay, so surprisingly enough, I was looking up student mentality, and you can never find it together as far as the definition. So I found student and mentality, like the meaning of both, separately. So I'll go over what the meaning of a student is. So it means someone who studies for a particular profession or subject. And then when it comes to mentality, it's a characteristic of our mind in a way of thinking about a person or group. So in definition, what student mentality is: someone is constantly remaining a student and having that mindset and a way of thinking to continuously learn and grow. So it's always understanding that there's still more you can learn. There's still more you can do, regardless of where you are now, based on where you want to be. So just that person who constantly wants to improve on themselves. I know we say it all the time, 1% better each day. Even in the hard times, which is when it's like the best time to remain a student, it's just constantly having that mindset that you can always grow. All right, next slide, Elise. All right, so how do we remain a student in our business? The first thing, you can never be comfortable. And a lot of the times, even myself, I've fallen victim to this as well, because you get to a certain point where you get good at something, you get proficient at it, you're very constant, you're very consistent, and it's easy to get comfortable in that state. But you have to realize, once you become comfortable, you become stagnant. And you always have to understand that we have to be in a state of being uncomfortable. Even in ownership, it's about taking risks. It's about stretching outside of your comfort zone in order to grow. But this is a constant thing I have to tell myself. And I know sometimes I have conversations with Van as well. He'll get on me like, hey, you're comfortable right now. It's time to step out of your comfort zone. And that helps me to remain a student, because sometimes you can't see, the comfort zone you're in. Sometimes you have to reach out so someone else can see it for you, because I know a lot of the times ego gets in the way and you get good at something. So you want to just stay in it and be good at it. But that's when you realize it's time to move to the next level. But you also have to keep adjusting your goals. I remember Lamine talked about this at the conference. He said once he sets his goals for something, if he's close to hitting his goal, he always wants to readjust it, because once you hit that goal, that's when you're going to get back to your comfort zone. So you have to make sure you're constantly adjusting your goal so you don't slow down. And that's what I wrote. We tend to slow down once we get close to our goal. Instead of slowing down, change the mindset to raise the bar each time you get close. So you always have something you're chasing. And also, don't set your goals too low. It creates a false sense of accomplishment. A lot of the times we set our goals really low and we hit it and we're like, okay, I'm really good now. I'm excited, but we're cutting ourselves short, right? A lot of the times you should only be able to achieve 70% of your goal, because that's how you're going to be able to stretch yourself in order to be better. So I also have to keep that in mind as well, because a lot of the time setting goals, writing our goals on Sunday, we tend to lowball ourselves, but I always want to make sure my goals are pretty high. So even if I do achieve 70% of it, I can still be a better person than I was if I had set it lower. And then always look to the next level. You have to keep in mind that there's someone who's always doing better than you. Find them, hang around them, and see what they're doing. It's a constant game of chase. And it keeps you not just excited and driven, but also realizing that this is going to help you grow each step of the way, because there's always going to be someone better. I'm chasing the next person right now, and I'm pretty sure our NCs are chasing the next person as well. But it's just that mindset of understanding that, especially in what we do, there's no point where you have to stay stagnant. There's no point where there's a ceiling. You can always constantly grow and constantly move forward.
Yeah. So, wow. I mean, it's all like really relevant, because regardless of where you are in the training program, I remember even sort of getting a little cocky when I promoted a couple leaders on my team. And sometimes we go through this mindset where we think we know at this point, like, all right, we know enough. So now it's all on us. And whether, you're an owner and you've got a couple promotions, or you're, an NC, or you're a new leader, that mindset of thinking you know enough is really poisonous, because then you stop thinking new information could be good. And I wanted to ask you this, Crystal, because I think, like, for me, I wasn't a great student in school. I was okay. I looked at like doing extra credit stuff or going to class early. I just never thought of that as, I was like, there's no way I'm doing it. Like, I was the guy that would push back the homework to the last second. But when I got into business, all of a sudden my student mentality got sort of enhanced because it became important. But it was still a slow process for me at first. You have been one of the best, and the reason you were chosen, at utilizing all the resources around you, like participating in calls. You were a leader in the field. Before you got even selected to be on Larry's call, you snuck on his call. So on the Sunday call. So can you talk a little bit, maybe you have a slide about it, but I don't remember you having this specific slide, but can you talk about your participation in all forms of learning, not just the impact in the morning, and how much that helped you grow faster in your training program?
I know I always feel nervous when I tell everyone that I snuck on the calls. But when I started in the business, a lot of the times you don't really see the bigger picture right away. You kind of see where you are now. And I remember when they talked about the Sunday calls, and my leader told me, this is the requirements you need to get on the call. And I remember Greg talking about it. And I was like, well, I always remember this one phrase: if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So I remember when I got into leadership and the opportunity was there to get on the call, but I wasn't in that position yet. I asked my leader, and if you don't ask, you'll just never know. I asked my leader, I was like, hey, can I just get on the Zoom link? I'll be on your Zoom link. I'll turn my camera off. I won't really say anything. I'll just listen. And I realized getting on those calls, a lot of the times, the question someone asked or what Larry went over and the mindset on the calls helped me so much on a day-to-day basis, because sometimes we don't even realize what we're struggling with until someone asks the question. But I'm going to be honest, a lot of the times, if I would go through a slump or have those like portion when I was going through the training program, and we all have them when you go through a slump, your student mentality takes a hit sometimes because, your ego is hurt, you're trying to figure out what's going on. And sometimes I would get on the call and I wouldn't really just listen. I was like on it because I was able to be there. But then there's those days when, Larry would talk about waking up and understanding, hey, it's not about staying down. It's about what are you going to do when you get knocked down? How are you going to get back up? So it's still a roller coaster. It was still a roller coaster for me. I got on the calls, but sometimes I was very stubborn towards it, right? Because I was going through my own struggles. But continuously putting yourself in that environment where it's very positive, where it's all about learning and constant feedback would wake me up out of those moments. And I just wanted to let everybody know that it's okay to go through those slumps, but you need people around you, whether they're in person or over those Zooms, to really wake you up sometimes so you can really get back out there. Because I know a lot of the times when we hit slumps, those are like the hardest ones to get out of. So those were the biggest ones for me, the Sunday calls, and then our high roller calls as well with Matt.
Yeah. And, we mentioned the Sunday call, but it was, Crystal wasn't just on that one. She was on the rep call. She's on the leader calls, the all-star calls. And on top of that, she's networking in her office. And, this phrase has been tossed out a lot, like the 3 words in real estate: location, location, location. Well, in our business, the 3 most important words are networking, networking, networking. So you have to kind of look at it as you got 2 options. You either do this on your own or you use the help around you. And I think the sooner you realize that your path of least resistance is by getting help from people who are doing better than you at your weakness, it makes everything happen faster and you just find more success quicker. So I think, again, Crystal talked about her going through the field and her having some downtimes and just absorbing the positive information from other people. And sometimes it's repetitive, like you hear something similar, but then that one little nugget comes out and it totally changes your perspective. And that's where always listening, always taking notes, always being in tune. You never know what you're going to learn. So I just wanted to make sure we hit on that because, Krista, that was a big part of your success on why you were able to overcome your challenges as a leader faster. You still had them. You just overcame them faster because you were always networking with people who were doing better than you.
I remember that one time I think I was a week into the office. I chased you down just to say, hey, just introduce myself. I was so freaked out by it, but a lot of times we are when we network for the first time. But guys, it's okay. Everyone's always willing to help.
Absolutely.
All right, Elise, next slide. All right, so then this is what I was going to talk about. A lot of times we're not sure how to network. And I think that was one of the biggest things when we come in. It's like, how do we network? This is not something that's normal. In, regular society, networking is seen as, people are giving away information, and a lot of people are very selfish with information. But I always think about two things. So ask about what you're struggling with right now. A lot of the times you might not have this crazy question, but what are you struggling with? What are you going through at the moment? And how can you get help on that? So that's the first one. The second one, there's always something that's coming up that you're going to need to do. Ask a question on that. So for example, if you're a leader and you're about to run your first road trip, maybe network on how to run the road trip, right? You've seen it done before. You've probably been on a road trip before, but have you led the road trip? So asking questions on how to do it and how to make it as successful as possible. is one of the easiest way to think on how to network and what questions to ask. And a lot of the times, the things we're struggling with are the ones we're afraid to ask about because, you know, a lot of people have ego. I'm that person as well. It's all about staying humble and understanding that, you know, struggles are meant to, you know, grow. They're meant to help you grow, make you stronger. So it's okay if you're struggling with something, but making sure you're asking for help on that and how to get out of it. You not only help yourself, but the next person who's going to have that struggle, they're going to need your help as well. And now that you've gone through it, you can be able to be better equipped to help them. Just understand that your network is your net worth. I always think about that. It's kind of like a tongue twister, but the more people you network with, the higher net worth you'll have.
Yeah. I always, you know, I remember when I was new and I was talking to people at a conference, or I'd, you know, get on a Zoom or well, I didn't have Zoom when I was going through the field, but when I would get on a call, I was always afraid, like, is my question going to be good enough? Some of us worry about asking the perfect question to make ourselves sound smarter. Well, guys, you know, you don't have to ask the perfect question. The perfect question is, what are you going through right now? And that's what Crystal just said. Like, what are the challenges you're having? And here's the beauty, you know, whether you talk to someone that's, you know, a leader for 2 months, or if you're new and you want help, whether you're talking to an NC, whether you're talking to someone who got promoted ownership, everybody went through what you went through, right? So it's not like you're talking to someone who like skipped the steps and, you know, wouldn't be able to understand what you're talking about. So there's not one question you could ask someone where they wouldn't be able to think back and say, oh yeah, that's right, I went through that. Now, the other thing is, a lot of people want to ask, you know, the highest performing office, and they want to go to that owner and say, hey, owner, how do I build a couple leaders on my team? You know, I'm sure you could ask Lamine. Lamine would be great, but you'd probably be better off networking with someone who just did it, whether it's in your office or in another office. So it's kind of like you want to network, but you want to network ahead of the person that just did what you did, right? Because they're going to have the most recent experience of being where you were and where they are now. And so it's important, but just guys, ask questions about your situation. And she said, just write your biggest challenge and make your questions about that, and then the next up and coming challenge. So I think that's really important, because some of us are so nervous about not sounding smart enough. Trust me, just ask the question. We've all been through it.
I know that's such a huge point. And also you're right, Van, you know, networking on where you need to be right now is so huge, because a lot of the times we ask, you know, maybe an NC on something and what they're doing right now, but we're not there yet. And it seems so far, it can also be discouraging as well. So understanding where you are and where you need to get to, just find that next person.
Absolutely.
All right, next slide, Elise. All right, so how do you know you've lost your student mentality? I added this slide because it's kind of like when you've lost your attitude in the field and you're at that point where you're not sure if you lost your attitude and you think, you know, I'm just going to power through this. It's kind of like the same thing, right? So you start viewing feedback as negative or an attack on yourself. Once you start feeling that, you know, someone trying to help you is negative, you've already lost your student mentality. You've stopped growing, you've gotten stagnant, right? You're at this place where you're good at something, but you're not really moving forward. That's another sign you've probably lost your student mentality. You've become the best at something, and that's all you've been doing. You haven't stretched out, you haven't struggled with anything, and that's all you're focusing on how good you are at this one thing. And the last one, you're not failing. A lot of the times we're so afraid of failure, but it's the one thing that shows you that you're actually trying, that you're actually growing. And I like to tell my guys all the time, don't be afraid to fail. You know, that's what we're here for, because you're going to fail forward. It doesn't matter what you do. I can't promise success, but I can promise you failure. And that's how you get to success. But losing your student mentality is kind of like losing your attitude for the first time you're not sure. It doesn't mean you get angry, it doesn't mean you blow up, but it means that sometimes you realize that times when you're getting feedback, you're not receiving that feedback, you're not taking what you need out of it. But you're also in a place of just very comfortable, very confident on the one thing that you've learned a month ago. And then you haven't failed at anything new. So really taking a step back, really looking in the mirror and understanding, what kind of feedback have I taken, and how has it affected me? How do I feel when I get that feedback? And have I failed at anything lately? Have I tried something new? Have I progressed any further than where I'm at right now?
Yeah, it's it's like, you know, when I was in school, you know, my mom said, hey, you're struggling, you know, with whatever class, whether it's literature or language arts, hey, do you want a tutor? And I said, absolutely not. There's no way. Like, I'm not going to sit next to some other kid that's, in the same class as me, and they're so smart and I'm so dumb. And, that was my ego. And that was me looking at information being shared and seeing it as a threat. And I think a lot of people, they miss out on getting better because they feel so bad about admitting that someone's better at something. And guys, like, the faster you just admit it, and we always talk about, admit what you suck at and go to people who are strong at what you're weak at. Like, that's how you grow faster. But if you ignore it or you hide it, it just gets worse. And eventually you become that stubborn, hard-headed person. And we all go through it. But the key element is to admit what you're bad at, excuse me. And then from there, now you can get help, right? We talked about this before. When someone goes to Alcohol Anonymous, the first thing they say is, hey, my name's Van, I'm an alcoholic. Well, when you guys walk into your office, if you're a leader and you're not good at recruiting, you can't close interviews. You got to say, hey, my name's Van, I'm bad at recruiting, but I need to network with someone who's good at recruiting. Hey, my name's Crystal, I'm bad at training. And I know she's not bad at training, but if she was, she should admit it and not be ashamed of admitting it, because everybody has stuff that they're bad at. So you shouldn't be looking at what your weaknesses are and think, well, I don't want to admit my weaknesses because that shows weakness. No, not admitting your weakness is a weakness. Admitting your weaknesses is a strength. And by admitting it, you now can get help faster. So it's just an important part of being a student, is not being so afraid of reaching out to someone who's doing better, because once you copy them, you can get the same results as them. And now you'll be teaching other people. Like, our business has a short-term memory, right? What you were bad at last week can all of a sudden be what you're great at the following week. So just something to keep in mind. Really good stuff, Crystal.
I think the biggest part where I lost my student mentality then was when I was training. I got to the point where I was interviewing, I was coaching and training, but I was losing people constantly. So I'd close them, I'd be good in the field, but they weren't staying. And in my mind, it's not my fault. It's them. It's the field, it's the business, they don't want to work hard. And a lot of the times we have this mentality, instead of looking at, okay, did I get to know this person? Did I offer them the right opportunity? Was I spending enough time with them? And I wasn't. In my mind, I was driven, they should have been driven, and I didn't help them to actually get to that point. But in my mind, it was them. So I think that was the one point where I realized this is how I feel when I lose my student mentality. So moving forward, if I start to have this negative feedback towards the outside and not myself, I've lost my student mentality.
Yeah, it's a tough place, because when you stop thinking you can learn, you fall into this trap, and you really it can waste a lot of time. It can waste months where you're stubborn and you're frustrated, and we've all been there. And it goes back to the whole thing, is when we think we're done learning. Like, when we think we know enough, that's when you're in trouble. You should never think you know enough, no matter who you are, no matter what level. You should always be looking at whatever you can do better, and searching out people that are good at what you're not as good at. And then that's how you fix it fast. So really good stuff.
All right, next slide, Elise. All right, so how do we fix our student mentality? The biggest one is asking for feedback on your weaknesses. This one is going to be the hardest thing you're going to have to do, because you have to look at your negatives. And it's kind of like when we talk about, when we have the ugly baby syndrome, we don't want to say we have the ugly baby, right? Because we think our baby's the best baby. But it's also looking at ourselves. That's one of the hardest thing as well, is just come in at the end of the day and understand you failed in the field because you lost your attitude. Understand you failed in the field because you weren't utilizing in the systems, and telling someone, hey, what is your feedback for me? Because I failed today because it was my fault, right? That's very, very hard. And then you always want to find someone at the next phase to ask what you're going through right now. We just talked about that. This is one of the hardest part in the stretch to getting back to being a student, is admitting that you're wrong and focusing on what you did wrong and how you can overcome that. A lot of the times we don't like looking in the mirror. I don't like looking in the mirror and looking at my flaws, but I've realized the more I've done that, the faster I grow, the faster I get over my learning curve to the next step. And it's going to be uncomfortable the first couple of times you do it, but the more you do it, the more you get used to that feeling of understanding, like, okay, I messed up. How do I get help, and how do I move forward? And at some point you'll get to the feeling of, okay, you're almost happy when you're messed up, because now you can find someone to help you out with something. It's like, okay, now I can get help because I know what I messed up at. But the initial couple of times you're going to do it, it's going to be a challenge. It's very hard to look at our flaws and our weaknesses, but it's how you get ahead faster. It's how you cut your learning curve even shorter.
Yeah. You either look at the situation and you sort of, you point the finger, or you look at the situation and you point the thumb, right? It's kind of like you're either finger pointer or a thumb pointer. And finger pointers, it's never their fault. It's always, the circumstance. It's always the territory. It's always the people they have on their team. As leaders, we have to take the blame, right? Whatever circumstances happen, we have to look at it and say, what could have we done better? And of course, there's circumstances we can't control, but our job is not to complain and to blame things we can't control. It's to look at ourselves and say, where could we have done better? And it's a massive challenge for a lot of people, because if you've been a finger pointer your whole life, where it's always woe is me, it's always sort of the, misery loves company, or, self-pity, where you feel bad for yourself because of things that are happening, you've got an uphill battle. But, the good news is there's people around you who are extremely accountable. They hold themselves accountable. And they've been able to work on that skill for a while. So your job is to hang out with people who really hold themselves accountable, and how they look at a problem that happens to them. It's the reaction to that problem. It's not the problem itself, right, Crystal? Because we all have stuff that happens to us, and you've been through times where something bad happened to you with your crew. Like you said, you blame the crew. That team.
I did.
As opposed to saying, you know what, I know that happened, but what could have I done better? And if you always think, what could have I done better? Then it's great, because you're going to approach the next situation with more experience and more ability. The other thing is, this helps in business, but this also helps in personal life. Because if you're a person in your personal life that always blames others, when there's a fight going on, you're going to be the person that has to be stubborn and keep fighting, as opposed to look at yourself and admit, you know what, I'm going to say sorry first. I'm going to be the one who admits that I was wrong. Even if, maybe they're wrong too, I'm going to be the one who admits it. And when you're coaching your people, if you admit where you screwed up before you start coaching someone, you're going to have their ear, you're going to have respect. But if you never admit where you were wrong, and you always tell people you were right, oh, listen, I was right, you were wrong, people aren't going to want to listen to you. They're going to think you're full of it, and they're going to think that you never acknowledged the reality of what happened. So admitting when you were wrong to people, holy crap, it is a whole nother level of respect. And now you have their attention and their trust a lot more. So I think it's obviously a great point.
Yeah. And the beauty about admitting when you're wrong is
You just frozen up a little bit there, Crystal. Are you there? Elise, am I frozen, or is that Crystal?
It's Crystal.
All right, we'll give her a second. Before Crystal comes back, I want to make sure that you guys know we can ask questions in the Q&A. There's already a couple questions that have been popped in there, which we'll get to in a minute. But if anybody else has questions, please feel free to ask them. And, as Crystal's about to come back, I'll just mention that, a lot of us, when we think about being a leader, we think of being a leader means you have no weaknesses to your people. You never want to show them that you yourself messed up. Your goal is to come across and think that I'm invincible and I don't make mistakes. Man, that's such a wrong way to look at it. Even when you guys are, doing interviews and you're, having people come on your team, the best thing you can do is admit when you screwed up. Whether it's, hey, when I was new, here's why I messed up. When I was a new guy, I wasn't taking notes. When I was a new leader, I wasn't as focused as I should have been. When you have people on your team and, something happens with the territory, instead of saying to them, why'd you screw up your territory? Like, what, hey, I screwed up. I should have prepared you better. That's my fault. Like, looking at every situation and trying to figure out where you can take accountability for it is a massive difference in how conversations can go. But so many of us, because we don't want to come across as inadequate, we look at ourselves and think, well, I have to put myself on this pedestal to my people. We interview people, we say, yeah, you just got to have a great attitude. You got to be tough. You got to work like an entrepreneur. But then you don't admit that when you were new, you weren't any of those things. You just act like you're those things now. So you act like that's what you need out of people. As opposed to when you're talking to people or you're coaching people, like, hey, when I was in your shoes, man, I was a total screw up. Here's all the things I did wrong, right? Or when you go through scenarios, stop trying to point the finger at your people or stop trying to coach them and say how bad they are. Admit where you could have done better first, because it creates a much better sort of environment for a real back and forth, because you lose so many people by not being the first one to admit when you were wrong, right? So something to think about when you guys are coaching people. I want to go through some of these questions before we get Crystal back on. So we got 4 questions in now. How was it starting out as an entry level? What difficulties did you face and how did you improve? Well, I will answer a couple of these. And Elise, how many more slides do we have?
Ooh, sorry. I believe we just have this one, this one, and then like the previous 2 more after this.
Okay, got it. So 2 more. So guys, apologies that Crystal, her internet went down. She's in another office, but it was good until then. But let's get to these questions real quick. So how was it starting off as an entry level? What difficulties did you face? How did you improve? Again, I've been doing this a long time, but I will tell you that entry level was tough for me because it was different. I came from restaurants. I had to sort of embrace a whole different work schedule, showing up earlier, staying later, working Saturdays. The restaurant business was super casual. This was more professional. So I had to change my habits on how I sort of looked at myself and how I perceived myself. But a lot of that came over the first, 4 to 5 weeks by, hanging out with and networking with the top people in the office. And so when I was new, what helped me is become more of an example or more of a professional was I associated with the top people in the office, the managers, the assistant managers. And because it would have been easy for me to associate with other people who were sort of, maybe not as focused, but I realized quickly, those people weren't getting ahead. You could kind of look around everybody's offices and you can see the people who are focused and you can see the people who are not as focused. And your job is to network with those people who are focused. And because that's where you want to be. You want to be someone who's moving ahead quickly. And if you get stuck in the muck with certain crews, certain crowds, especially if they're not doing good, the old phrase I already said it, misery loves company, they're going to drag you down. So it's kind of like I was always cordial. I high five people. I said, what's up? But I knew my goal was to move up. I did not want to stay entry level. So the difficulty for me was change of schedule. Obviously the going out, getting a lot of no's, working more. But my other difficulty was evolving into more of a professional, which before, restaurant business is very casual. Okay. Before Crystal gets on, hopefully she can get back on. Are there any books that you've read or you'd recommend for people who are first building their teams? I recommend Dale Carnegie is the author, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think people skills, as they call them, soft skills, are, some of the most valuable skills you can have in the world. And if you're trying to build a team, you got to have a really good understanding of people. You got to have a good understanding of how people think and how to build relationships with them. And How to Win Friends and Influence People is a book that just talks about the initial conversations of making people feel important. And I think that if you're trying to get better at building a team, you first got to get better at building relationships, because the system and stuff's already in place. The products are great. So just work on that stuff. Okay, Crystal, we got you back.
I'm back.
Thank you so much for getting back to us. I was hanging on, but you're much better at this than I am. So we got 2 more slides, Crystal. So why don't we power through it? And the good news is I was able to answer a couple questions, but we have a lot more questions coming in. So let's power through these slides and then get to the Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. All right, let's get to the next slide, Elise. All right, so benefits of maintaining a student mentality. So it shortens your learning curve. The journey becomes less stressful. A lot of the times we don't realize there's other people that are in our situations, or they've actually gotten through our situation that can help us with this and actually make our learning curve shorter. But, we're less stressed because now we can get help. But you also pave the way for the next person, right? A lot of the times we have this mentality of thinking, why is this happening to me, instead of what is this going to teach me? How can I learn from this? And how can I use this experience to help the other person, to help the next person on my team or someone else in the office that's not on your team? Because at the end of the day, We're a whole team as a whole, right? So understanding, maintaining it, and the benefits of maintaining that student mentality is just, you're just gonna have a shorter journey through whatever you're doing, whether it's going through the program, going through the field, learning interviews, you know, how to build relationships, whatever it is, your journey is gonna be a lot less stressful, a lot shorter, but also you can understand how to help more people just from experiencing these different things and then asking help on whatever you're struggling with. All right, next slide, Elise. All right, so key elements on how to get ahead faster. So it's always seeking out different avenues of information because there's so much information available to us. We have conferences that we attend, you know, the Zoom meetings, Sunday calls, your high roller calls, whatever it is, there's so many avenues that we can actually utilize on a day-to-day basis just to help us grow faster. Always allowing yourself and applying what you've learned. A lot of times we network, we get information, but what are you going to do with that information afterwards? Are you going to apply it or are you going to put it in the trunk of your car, right? That's another big thing. It's like always apply what you've learned. And sometimes maybe not everything that you learn is going to be for you, but it might just be that one thing that you make a change with that actually change your trajectory. Participated in all the resources we have available. As I said, I can't stress it enough. There's so many things that we have available now that's so helpful, even though we're all, apart. We're all in different states, maybe in a different country, but we can always take the phone up and call someone. We can always get in a Zoom call. There's always conferences happening, talking to your owner, seeing if you can travel to a different office. It's just so much resource that we have today that can help us move ahead faster. And the biggest thing is just remaining humble. In order to be a great student, you have to be humble. You have to understand that continuously growing, you have to take charge of your own journey. And that means remaining humble and asking questions constantly and being open to feedback.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the whole concept of traveling to other offices, like, when I was in my office originally, the nearest office was I was in Northern California. The nearest office was in Southern California. So it was a, 7-hour drive and, whatever we would do it. But now, a lot of you guys, you're in cities where there's an office every 5 miles. And, you might be doing something, but these day trips where you just go to an office and you hang out with the owner, there's so many people now where there's a leader that has something in common with a successful owner. And instead of that leader going to the office and just going in the field, that leader goes to the office and hangs out with the owner. And, the owner that sends them will pay for their whatever they're going to make that day, just so they can hang out with that owner all day and get to know that person. Because that relationship and them seeing the bigger picture can make a big difference. Or you're a leader and you're struggling in the field. You don't always have to go to your own leaders to get a retrain. Go to another office, put yourself in a different environment. Maybe you're struggling at interviews, go to another office, hang out with a different environment where there's a better recruiter there. That is not utilized enough. So being a student is not just Zoom calls. It's not just you asking your mentor, your leader. It's by getting out into the world and traveling to other offices and seeing if you can learn from, because sometimes you just need that different environment to sort of get the juice back and be like, okay, that's what I was missing. Because I think that's a huge point, Crystal, you just brought up. People need to do that more often for sure.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times we don't realize if you're a leader who has people on their team, you have leaders or other distributors, sometimes you're not the person to get them excited, right? Maybe it's someone else, maybe they're in a different office, but also understand that finding that person for them makes it easier for you. It's, another conversation that you can have for the next person that you can save, right? It's just sometimes we try to be the end all be all for all our guys, but you might not be that person. Utilize the resources we have and have someone else be the wingman. It's according to Larry, find your wingman for your person and have them motivate them for you.
Yeah. Listen, I can relate to certain people. Crystal can relate to certain people, but we can't relate to everybody. So when I hire someone that has a military background, Crystal is their new mentor, or Crystal is going to build a relationship with them on top of what I'm doing. All the pressure is not on me. The other thing I'll say before we get to the questions, because this is the last slide, right, Crystal?
It is.
So when we have people on our team, sometimes we think we can't admit when we have something wrong with us. We're like, well, I have people on my team. I can't stop training them. I can't leave the office because they need me. Man, just goes back to even if you have leaders, if you are not the example, you can't pretend that you are. You're going to lose their respect. they're gonna like nod their heads, but really not really pay attention. Your best bet is to say, hey guys, I know I hired you. I know I trained you. I'm not the best example right now. I got to put myself on a retrain. I need to go to another office. So I want you guys to network with people here for the next couple of days, because I'm going to put myself on a retrain in another office. People think that's a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's a strength. When your people see that you admit it, that you need help, and you go somewhere to get help, guess what's going to happen when they have a weakness? They're going to do the same thing. But if they see this prideful person that doesn't go and get help, and so you just say, oh, I'm fine, but they can see that you're not fine, well, they're going to react the same way. So it's such a chain reaction of positive things when you admit it and you go get help, even if you got a big team. And it's even more important you have a big team to admit it, because that's when you can completely change their future by showing them what it really means to be a student. Okay, so let's get to these questions. Crystal, I mean, you got 11 questions coming in the chat. So obviously this subject has hit a nerve. I already answered a couple, so we'll get to these ones. What is your favorite thing about the business, Crystal?
Honestly, I feel like okay, and I know this sounds weird, but when someone calls me and they're struggling with something, I get excited. I always want to talk to someone when they're struggling, when they have a great day, when they're not worried about anything. I'm like looking for the person who struggles. And I feel like after I have that conversation, after, we talk it out and they come back and they have a successful day and they tell me how much that's helped, that's one of the best feeling ever. Just being able to give that, advice, have someone take it, have someone actually be a student, apply it, and then come back finding success after that. I feel like that's one of the greatest feeling, and I enjoy that every time. I know it sounds weird that I'm waiting for someone to have a bad day, but I like having those conversations. I like being able to help someone, and I like seeing them coming out on the other side successful after applying what I helped them with.
No, for sure. I mean, that's how people get better. It's not about when someone has a good day, pat them on the back. It's when someone has a tough day and you're able to give them a solution to their problem. That's obviously huge. How can you motivate people on your team when they're having bad days? You try to relate and understand, but they're still having a bad mentality.
I think that's a two-part, because sometimes it's hard. We don't realize it's hard to motivate someone if they're having a bad day, if you're also having a bad day too. I struggled with that in the beginning, because we also have to realize we're human as well. Even though we're their leader, we're going to have a bad day. And I think those are the times, if you're not the best person to motivate them, find the person who is, find the person who has gone through that struggle and utilize them to help your person. Because sometimes you're not in the right mindset to give the advice or to help them through that situation. And admitting that, and the same thing we were talking about earlier, admitting that and finding the person who is the best option for your person. So I always think, for this person and what they're going through, what is their best option? What is the best solution for them? Not what is the best solution for me. And understanding where your mindset is at when you're in that space of trying to help them.
Yeah, that just goes. Sometimes it's better to network your people with somebody else. If you're training somebody and maybe you're not clicking with them, say, hey, maybe it's better if you work with somebody else. And when leaders cross-train well in offices, it just really helps the growth. It's when leaders get this tribalism with their people, like no one can train my people, these are my guys. It makes it harder. Obviously, you got to have those key core leaders that you trust. And when you build that trust with each other, then you can cross-train people. But the other thing Crystal said is, your attitude has to be the best. So if you have somebody in your team that has a bad attitude, but you have the right attitude, then you're doing your job. You can't force someone to have a good attitude. You just got to be the example of it. And then if they can't fix it, you do everything you can. You cross-train them, you network them. Maybe they just shouldn't do this. And it's okay. You don't have to make everybody do this. Attitude, sort of the mandatory thing that everybody needs to have coming into this as they grow. Okay. I recently had a conversation with my guy on my team. I messed up in the beginning by not teaching and showing him the systems in the field. I'm now trying to rewrite his training through systems, but I'm not trying to ingrain systems in myself first. So a systems question.
Okay. I think maybe have a conversation with your person and apologizing. Apologizing that you messed up, apologizing that moving forward, it's a journey of you both learning. I think that brings you to a space of being open, because you have to be open to remain a student. You have to be open to the information. So I would always throw myself under the bus if I messed up, and let them know I messed up, apologizing because I'm their leader and I was supposed to be there for them, giving them the right information. And then talking to them on how you both can work together to fix it moving forward. If you're not the best person at the systems, find someone who is and have that person not only teach them, but you as well. So your person sees you learning, they see you being a student. The best way to teach and coach is to lead by example. So if something that you're struggling with that you tried to teach them and you messed up, apologize, create that space of being open and show them that you're going to learn with them moving forward and you're going to help them moving forward. I think that's the best place to start with that.
Nice. We got a lot of good questions. I'm going to try to keep them around the student mentality subject. How did you maintain your student mentality and attitude as you were going through? I know you talked about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I think initially, at first it was fun. It was fun learning, but at some point you're going to lose your student mentality. And the easiest way to maintain it is to look at other people that are passing you up because they're remaining a student. I never wanted to be the last person. I'm very competitive. And if you're not a competitive person, that's okay. But you also have to understand your time in the program is going to be lengthened so much the more stubborn you are and the less of a student you are. So anytime I'd lose my student mentality and fall behind, I'll start watching the people who are getting ahead because they're being a student. And that sometimes makes me angry because I realize it's my fault, right? But I think you should look around you on who's doing better, who's moving forward faster, and why they are, because they're being a student, they're learning, they're growing. And if they're passing you up, it means you need to get back on being a student.
Nice. I'm going to go down here a little bit. I know we got a lot of good questions. This one again about sort of being a student. You mentioned earlier you were stubborn. What helped you get past that to not shorten your growth or not to hold you back?
I think it kind of relates to what I just said. At times when I did get stubborn, I realized the time in the program is going to be so much longer. The time to implement and affect someone else or, make my life better, make my future better is going to take longer. A lot of the times we don't realize the longer you stay in one position, the longer it is before you can actually impact someone else's life. The longer it's going to take before you can get to your goals, the longer it's going to take for you to retire or get to the point where you can be comfortable. So I think the way I motivated myself is the more I remain stubborn, the longer it's going to take for me to hit my goals, the longer it's going to take for me to impact someone else, and I had to come from it from a selfless point of view, because being selfish and student mentality doesn't go well together. So I had to realize, the longer I wait, the longer it's going to take for me to hit my goals. And I don't want to wait to get to my goals.
Yeah. And, the longer you wait, the longer it takes for you to help your people, because if you're not getting better, you can't help others. It's kind of like that thing, you got to help yourself before you can help others. And being a student is an outlet to helping your people, because you get more information that you feed to them, and then they use that information for their situation. When working on recruiting and team building, what should I focus on? I have 2 leaders. They're both great. How do I keep more people here? So it's like a team building question.
Okay. I think the biggest thing, and I talk about it all the time, once you become a leader, it's never about you anymore. It's about your team. So are you providing the best information for your team? Are you providing the best coaching? Are you spending enough time with them? Are you getting them around the right people so they can get locked in? A lot of the times it's about finding that person that's going to tell them the phrase or give them the advice that locks them in. And so they can see, hey, this person's like me. This person's gone through what I've done. I can do it now because I see someone like me doing it. It means it's possible for me as well. So it's really just sitting down and seeing, are you providing the best opportunity for your guys? And are you being the best example? We always have to understand, as a leader, it's about leading by example and not telling your guys what to do. It's better to show them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, listen, we got 2 more. We got so many questions, but we're not gonna be able to get to all of them, guys. I appreciate you guys asking. This has been awesome. But let's get to these last 2 here. The business requires us to be adaptable. I'm someone who's considered to be a perfectionist, which is a double-edged sword, double-edged blade. How do I work on beginning or being more adaptable without panicking about things not going as expected? This I've seen has stalled my student mentality in multiple situations.
There's a phrase in I think it's the Navy SEALs or it's the Marines. I can't remember which one. They're always only about 70% ready for whatever they're going to take on. And they're always like motivated to get it done, regardless if they're not 100%. Because in life, nothing's perfect. We don't live in a perfect world. And a perfect world will actually be very boring, honestly, would never go through any struggles. But you have to understand that, being perfect is way harder than getting something done, than trying something. If you constantly focus on being perfect at something, you'll never actually do it. You'll never be the person who asks the right question. It's just what question it is for you. You'll never be in the perfect situation. It's like, what situation is there to teach you the next lesson? It's never going to be something where, you understand something 100%. It's about what do you get from it so you can apply it for the next person. There's no such thing as perfection. It's like you rather be more the person who constantly tries things and learn than the person who's working on getting something perfect before you try it, because you'll never actually do it.
Yeah, it's better to just get it done. If you try too hard to be absolutely perfect in every way, it stalls it, and then you keep thinking, where did I screw up? I think just practice getting things done, like she said, is a really good way to look at it. And you'll fix things as you go. You'll see what you did wrong, and you'll constantly polish it. All right, last question. I got a guy on my team that's taking too much advice from a lot of people. We've heard this before. There is such a thing as over networking, which we didn't really talk about. Too much advice from a lot of people in sales, and is getting confused on what to do. I can tell he's getting stressed by that. How do I go about fixing that?
I think the best way to fix that is sit down with him and see, what are you actually struggling with right now? And asking that one question on just that. A lot of the times we're those people who are comfortable with networking. So we network about everything. We network about one thing, but with too many people, and we get so much different advice that we're confused on what to apply, or we apply everything and then it doesn't work out. It's understanding, sitting down with your guy, understanding what they're struggling with, telling them to find this one person or maybe two people, whatever it is, getting the advice, but always trying to implement that one advice before you try to jump into something else, before you try to ask for more help. It's all student mentality is about getting knowledge, but trying that out before you actually get some more, before you ask about something else. It's a constant asking for help, implementing what you've learned, seeing how that works, and then moving forward, instead of constantly getting information and constantly being confused on what to do. So have him just do that step-to-step process. I think I remember once I networked with Richard Anderson, and he gave me some advice, and he's like, okay, I don't want to tell you too much. Just chew on this right now, implement it, and then tell me how that works out. So it's just have them get the advice, chew on it for a little bit, implement it, see how it goes. And then if it doesn't work, then network again on it.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we appreciate all the questions. And, this is a great call today. I know we had a little moment where the internet was down, but we got Crystal back. And, we love these calls, and it's great because you guys get to hear from different people, and we know how important being a student and networking is. And today was a full, onslaught of information where you guys can hear from someone where that's been her biggest strength, is being a student. Doesn't mean she doesn't have her days where she wishes she was a better student. And that's why she's traveling right now. So everybody goes through it, but really listening and taking notes and applying what we talked about today can help you guys immensely. Crystal, thank you so much for being a great example. Great call today. Thanks everybody for hopping on. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you guys in a couple of weeks with Mr. Lamine. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Yep, take care.